Over 6,000 missiles. That's the number that's been reported in the latest wave of strikes against Iran. Not 600. 6,000. And according to multiple sources, Iran's oil depots and major airbases are now in ruins. This isn't just another escalation. This is the single largest barrage of the war so far. And the consequences are going to reshape the Middle East and the global economy for years to come. Here's what we know, what's been hit, and what happens next. The war between the United States, Israel, and Iran began on February 28, 2026, when U.S. and Israeli forces launched a massive campaign against Iran following the assassination of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. What started as precision strikes on military targets has spiraled into the most destructive conflict the Middle East has seen in decades. On April 1, 2026, Iran launched over 6,000 rockets and missiles at Gulf countries in retaliation. Arab media described it as the biggest security challenge since the Gulf Cooperation Council was founded in 1981. But the strikes didn't stop there. Throughout March, April, and into the summer, the exchange continued. U.S. forces struck Iranian coastal defense systems, missile launch infrastructure, and naval capabilities. Iran responded with Operation Nasser II, a sustained campaign of missile and drone strikes against U.S. assets across Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait. By July 2026, the conflict had entered a new phase. Iran's IRGC struck Amazon's AWS data center in Bahrain, what they called the digital eye of CENTCOM. They hit fuel terminals at Kuwait's Al Amati port. They targeted US F-35 hangars at Jordan's Al Azraq airbase. And despite the US military's initial objective of decisively degrading Iran's capabilities, defense analysts now acknowledge that Iran has rebuilt its operational tempo. The war has become a prolonged war of attrition. The most devastating blows have been to Iran's oil infrastructure. Israeli strikes systematically targeted for major storage facilities and a distribution center. The Tehran refinery in the south. Depots in Agdassi, Shahran, and Karaj. One resident from Karaj told the BBC, "It started with a red light that lit up everything, followed by a wave that jolted the door. Then the sky was lit again and a huge red cloud appeared." In the Shahran district, witnesses reported unrefined oil leaking directly into the streets. The oil ignited, creating a river of fire through residential neighborhoods. Tehran, a city of 10 million people, was plunged into darkness. Thick black smoke from the burning oil depots blotted out the sun. At 10:30 in the morning, cars still needed their headlights to drive along Valyasar Street, the city's main thoroughfare. The Iranian Ministry of Petroleum slashed daily fuel rations from 30 liters to 20 liters per vehicle. Long lines formed at gas stations. At least 6 people were killed and 20 wounded at one of the depot sites. The environmental impact is catastrophic. The Iranian Red Crescent Society warned that the smoke contains high concentrations of toxic hydrocarbons, sulfur, and nitrogen oxides. Any rainfall passing through these plumes becomes highly acidic, capable of causing skin burns and severe lung damage. Iran's retaliatory strikes have targeted U.S. military airbases across the region. But the question everyone's asking is, what about Iran's own airbases? According to reports, Iran's major airbases have been hit hard. Satellite imagery from Sentinel-2 shows burn marks at U.S. bases in Qatar and Bahrain. But the damage to Iran's own military infrastructure is harder to verify. What we do know is that the U.S. has been systematically targeting Iranian air defense systems, radar sites, and missile depots since February. The IRGC claimed that its missile and drone production has continued uninterrupted. General Shakarki stated, "Strategic missile production never stopped. Equipment produced during the war entered operational service immediately." But independent analysts question how long Iran can sustain this. The key question, can Iran continue to launch coordinated long-range missile and drone operations while its own infrastructure is being systematically degraded? This isn't just a military story. It's a human one. Over 1,300 Iranian civilians have been killed since the war began, according to Iran's UN ambassador. Thousands more have been wounded. A woman from Tehran told the BBC, "You can smell the burning. I can't see the sun. There is a horrible smoke. I'm very tired." Another resident described the scene, "I thought my alarm clock was broken." By 10:30 a.m., cars still needed headlights. The Iranian Health Ministry warned that the toxic air poses a life-threatening risk to the elderly, children, and those with pre-existing respiratory conditions. Acid rain is already contaminating the soil and water supply. But here's the surprising part: unlike the 12-day war in June 2025, when 6 million residents fled Tehran, this time the majority have stayed. The UN estimates only around 100,000 have left. Life continues. Roughly half the shops in Tehran are still open, even in the darkness. Some Iranians told the BBC they support the strikes, seeing them as the only way to remove the current regime. Others fear what comes after. One woman said, "Even if the war ends and we survive alive, the costs will be very high. I can't even tell who would take power." The economic consequences of this war are staggering. The Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important oil choke point, is effectively closed. Just 34 vessels transited the strait on July 5, against a typical daily flow of around 88. By July 13, that number had dropped to 14, 4 of them crude tankers. That's a 60% drop in a single week. The U.S. Energy Department said more than 8 million barrels of oil transited Hormuz on July 12 with U.S. military assistance. But that's roughly half the normal flow. Iran warned, if you can tolerate oil at more than $200 per barrel, continue this game. Brent crude has already climbed more than 6% in a single day. War risk insurance premiums for tankers using the strait have risen to roughly 8 times pre-crisis levels. Several protection and indemnity clubs have withdrawn cover altogether. So where does this go? There are 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, full escalation. The U.S. follows through on Trump's threat to hit Iranian infrastructure, bridges, power plants, energy facilities. Iran responds by striking regional energy installations. The war expands to a full regional conflict. Scenario 2, prolonged attrition. This is where we are now. Both sides continue trading strikes. Iran demonstrates a notable capacity to regenerate combat power. The U.S. continues to degrade Iranian capabilities. Neither side can deliver a knockout blow. The war drags on for months or years. Scenario 3, diplomatic off-ramp. Pakistan has been attempting to mediate. Iran and the U.S. have reportedly held back-channel discussions. But with each new wave of strikes, the window for diplomacy narrows. The reality is that the U.S.'s original objective, decisively degrading Iran's military capabilities, has not been achieved. Iran has adapted. It's rebuilt portions of its command and logistics network. It's shifted towards sustained regional retaliation designed to impose rising costs on U.S. forces. 5 months into this war, there is no end in sight. Over 6,000 missiles have been launched. Oil depots are burning. Airbases are in ruins. The global economy is feeling the shockwaves. And the only certainty is that the Middle East will never be the same. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe. I'm tracking this conflict every day and bringing you the analysis that cuts through the noise. Drop a comment: where do you see this conflict in 30 days? Escalation, attrition, or ceasefire? I read every response.